guys, thanks for joining. So I'm super excited for our book club today.
We'll edit right to that point right there. Look at
Exactly.
Sparkles is back, everybody.
There we go.
Yes.
Exactly. So anyway, our book club chapter this week is Habit 5, Seek First to Understand, Then to Be Understood. And I keep saying I think the last habit was my favorite. I think as an instructor of communication and somebody who actually coaches people on effective communication, this might be, this is my whole presentation right here is this chapter. So I'm excited about this conversation. So I will let you take it away, Mr. Shook.
LOL. Yes. So seek first to be understood, then seek first to understand and to be understood. So starting off in this chapter, so the chapter is also called Principles of Empathic Communication. So this empathic communication that is talked about in the book, it's, empathic listening is kind of getting inside another person's frame of reference. If we kind of start with that, what does he mean by that? What does that mean? Like getting inside another frame of another person's frame of reference, the empathic listening. What does that mean to you guys as you kind of read through this?
Well, for me, it's making sure that you have a clear vision of what they're trying to say, because a lot of times people will say, hey, I want to go right, but what they actually mean is I want to make 3 left-hand turns. But they tell you they want to go right? They tell you this is where, and so I think that when you get in there and you put yourself in their head and in their space, you find out that most people don't communicate clearly. They communicate very confusingly, and that by putting yourself in there, it gives you the opportunity to open up the doors to really understand where they're coming from.
Wow. That was really good.
To us in real estate, and I guess in any kind of sales capacity too, this just goes hand in hand with, we're always supposed to be asking questions. You can never ask too many questions. And whether that means you get, we always talk about getting to their pain, you have to go 3rd level on their pain. Why are they selling their house? Because we want a new house. No, there's something there. And it's like, oh, well, we need a new house because blank, blank. Even that's not it. We got to keep asking questions. So from that same vantage point, that's kind of what that thought process is like the more somebody talks and the more their emotions come out, the more that, and that's what I've learned talking to buyers, trying to figure out what do buyers really want in a house. And I kind of just say, like kitchen wise, what do you want? What do you guys do in there? And the more you talk to them, after you get about 30, 40 minutes in, all of a sudden they start gushing and they start talking about what's really important. And so, but not only is that important, but it's also important for me to see it from their perspective.
Right.
So that's what it is, because that's because we all have different perspectives.
Right.
They talked about the glasses thing, trying on different glasses or trying on the doctor's glasses instead of him giving you the right glasses,
Mm-hmm. Right. And then how is empathic listening different from attentive or sympathetic?
I think when you're listening empathically, you're listening to understand. You're making sure that what they're saying is what they're meaning. And, when you're listening to somebody and you just want to make sure that you get exactly what they're construing to you, that's 100% empathic listening. The other listening is, you could just be having a conversation. It could be for fun, but there are a lot of times if you're listening empathically, there's a means to an end. There's a reason. Anytime else you're listening to somebody, a lot of times it's just because they're talking, right? There's not a means to an end. You're not trying to get to the answer. Like to Steve's point, I had a client who we made an offer, or we're making an offer. I've got it written and waiting on them to sign. When I first started talking to her, she was like, I need new construction. It can't be over 10 years old. I want 3-car garage. I want this, and this. And I don't want to spend more than $900,000. I was like, well, that's 1.2 mil where you're looking. So you're not even in the right price point to begin with. But the more I showed her houses, the more I talked to her, You know, we say in this industry all the time, buyers are liars and so are sellers. They're really not liars, right? Like that's not true, but they don't always know how to communicate or realize that there could be a different path to get there. And so I think when you're listening empathetically, your objective is to meet them at their end goal or their end point. And the other listening is just a means to an end. You're having a conversation, you're having fun. Maybe somebody's had a bad day, so you're sympathetically listening. But when you leave that conversation, if you're listening through sympathetic ears, that conversation is washed from your brain. If you're using empathetic ears and you're listening to them where you're understanding them, you walk away with a conversation still going on in your head because that conversation meant something.
Right.
Right. What she said. But and then I think we talked about the difference between empathy and sympathy. I think sympathy almost, I don't want to say agree with. Like empathy, I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but I do have to see where you're coming from emotionally. And I think we started talking about this last week, how that's connected to that book, Never Split the Difference. We talked about there was the one situation where he was talking with the terrorist who had he kidnapped somebody and basically, and it's been a while since I've listened to it, but basically it was something to the effect of, he said to the kidnapper, look, I understand that because of this, you're upset. It's like, yes. He's like, and I understand that because this, and this, that you're really pissed off and that you feel like this and that. It's like, yeah. And it sounds like you're this and that. It's like, yes. And like right after he did that, they ended up releasing the hostage. Now he never said, hey, I completely agree with you. That was BS. But him actually coming and saying, I hear you, I hear what you're saying and I hear where your feelings are. Like acknowledging that, it just disarms, the tension. It disarms because, to Laura's point, the buyers, the faster we all get on the same page, the faster everything moves. Same thing with sellers. And that's the best way to do is just disarm all the bombs and come together, empathetically or empathically or whatever that word would be.
That word, that SAT word.
Right. And so empathic listening, he kind of talks about that being a powerful deposit into like the emotional bank account from one of the previous chapters. Let's talk about like the reverse of that, because it's so he talks about, most people aren't necessarily listening with the intent to understand. It's more of the intent to reply or the intent to influence. Have either of you guys, I know myself I have either of you guys had any experiences where you felt like you weren't being understood, but more somebody was just trying to, really influence you or really anything else other than, where it's just blatantly obvious. And how does that essentially kind of correlate with a withdrawal from like that emotional bank account? Like how did that actually feel for you guys?
Well, my favorite conversations are, I'm sorry, but.
Right.
Because when you're listening to somebody and they're saying to you, you hurt my feelings, you did this, and your objective, right? Both people's objective is to find a common ground and apologize and just move forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But someone in that conversation has to be willing to say, I'm sorry. No, but, because as soon as you say the I'm sorry, that's where you're listening to respond. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but you hurt mine first. Right? And so for me, if you can listen without the objective of responding, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find a viable solution for whatever you're trying to find. And even though you may not hear the I'm sorry back, or you may not hear the whatever you're looking for, the end of the conversation for me, I think has a deposit in both of those accounts for both people, or in that account for both people. Because if somebody can say I'm sorry and just walk away, the other person walks away and says, oh, me too. right? And there's no more need to defend. You're able to get on the same playing field. And so for me, somebody who can listen to understand is a relationship builder. Like that's a person that I want to be in business with. That's a person I want to be friends with. That's a person, my husband. I mean, he was the first person that lived this in my life.
Right.
My parents, my sister, my friends. It was always, I'm sorry, but Greg was just, I'm sorry. Fuck, keep fighting. I mean, that was my initial response.
Right.
Like I didn't even know how to handle that.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
whoa.
Like, wait, you didn't swing?
It's weird. It's very weird. But after being married to somebody who being right is not the most important, being in our relationship and understanding what makes our relationship tick is the most important for him. And it was such a good relationship example, because as I was living this with him, I was learning how to teach these communication skills, and it was eye-opening. I mean, it's, it makes you want to stay with that person. It makes you want to continue that relationship. It makes you want to do better for them. And for me, when you learn from somebody who listens to understand, it teaches you that lesson. Exactly. It has changed my parenting. It has changed how I talk to my clients. I mean, it'll change your whole life in a positive direction if you're able to kind of put that piece together. And so for me, it's a huge relationship builder. That those deposits are huge relationship builders. And for us, we're all in sales, right? So that's the core to our business.
And that's where I was going to go next, because I mean, when I'm making phone calls every day, you talk to somebody brand new, you have to ask questions to find out the answers, but you can't be thinking about what am I going to say next. Like we genuinely have to listen to what they're saying, because there's scripts that we're supposed to go down this and that, but we're supposed to really memorize them, internalize them, have them be completely natural. So that way we can 100% be there. And you can tell, and I'm not perfect at it. I'm not even close, but I can tell when I do well and when I don't do well. You can tell when the relationship starts out well. And I take that and I swing that into, then I see that on the other side. And that's kind of my trigger to remind myself, all right, I can't do that. Like, yeah, bad sales. Like I just took my son to go try on a suit. He's going to homecoming. So he wants to get a homecoming suit. So we go into the store. The guy takes us over the $800 suit section. And I was like, he didn't ask any questions. Hey, try this on. Dude, he turned his back. I literally ripped the jacket, threw it, and we ran. Like, I didn't even want to deal with him anymore. Seriously, he went to the register to do something. We were gone. But it's like, but he never, all right, what is this for? Like, what are you this? What are you that? He just like, he's like, oh, no. You can't try that on without trying on the pants here. We'll get you in the dressing room. I was like, the hell you will. You never asked a question. So, like, he had no idea what we needed, and it was just like, but if he had taken the time to ask the questions, and and that's what we need to do, not only in sales, but like you said, you bring it into your everyday life, Laura, and that's what we need to be with our kids. I mean, we were just talking about that last night, my wife and I, it goes back to earlier in the book, talking about there's leadership and there's management. Leadership is the understanding, is the, that part of management is just do it my way, damn it.
Well, I like how in the book, as he's describing this, he walks through a conversation with a child. I hate school. Well,
oh, right.
Do you really hate school? I hear what you're saying. I hear that you hate school. Can you explain to me what is upsetting you about school? And it wasn't school, right? It wasn't the umbrella. It was a little drop of rain under that umbrella that had, kind of snuck under the canopy. And so it's just, I always go back to the kids, because where I first learned about this mostly was Scouts, right? I teach a program for adult leaders so that they can learn how to communicate with their kids, because a lot of times we have these conversations with Scouts where it's like, I hate merit badges. Do you hate merit badges, or do you hate dump camping where you have to cook 3 meals and it's pouring down rain, right? But I believe, God, family, business, and I believe that's how God listens to us. That's how we should listen to our family. Therefore, that's how we should run our business.
Right. So empathic listening. It's funny. So that example that you just brought up, I loved that example, and it's true because so a little bit of background. I've done a lot of audit, and empathic listening I've learned from audit because a lot of folks are going to tell you what they want to tell you, whereas I need to know the reality. So a lot of the times I'm sitting on phone calls for an hour and a half just trying to get to the truth of, okay, well, I'm here to help. I'm not here to just write stuff up. I'm here to actually find like process gaps. I'm here to find this, but it all starts with like, I can't find that unless they tell me, and so it's really hard because if you're listening with the intent to influence, they're going to feel some kind of way and they're never going to tell you what you need to know, so it's really hard kind of just, almost kind of going in with a new frame of mind, like just a fresh slate. And it's just, has anything happened before? It really doesn't even matter what's going on right now, so how can we get our team to kind of understand the impact of, poor communication or even good communication on their organization? And has this chapter kind of giving you guys new ideas?
So for me, new ideas, probably not, but a realization that the ones that I know work should probably be implemented. Something working with a VA who is in the Philippines, you and I talk about this all the time, where Gladys makes my post and the language barrier is funny. I don't know if you noticed, Steve, but a lot of times my grammar on my post is like yesterday she posted a double negative, which was correct in what she was trying to say, but not at all how we talk. Right. And so for my guys, a lot of times what we do for one another is we repeat in our own words what we heard that person say. David, what I heard you say is you're looking for me to answer this question on how I would use empathetic listening within my team. Is that correct?
Maybe. No, that's really good. Yes.
Right. And so then your perspective is, my team's perspective is, oh, she got what I said. And if it wasn't that, then you can stop me right there before I make a mistake that's going to hurt the relationship. And you can correct it without me feeling attacked or you feeling unheard. Right? Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. I want to know how you're going to coach Steve with his team, not your team. Right? And so for us, that stop, repeat, and request, that feedback is there.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you said? Can we agree?
Oh, I love that.
And so we use that at a high level. I mean, Louis and I use it even in our emails. He'll send me back one more email. Hey, I understood you to say this. Are we on the same page? Yes. Perfect. And for me, sometimes it gets a little frustrating, and I don't ever let them see that, because for me, it takes an extra minute.
Mm-hmm.
But the relationship is created as a lifelong relationship. My guys are not going anywhere, and I don't want them to go anywhere, because if they don't have the skills, I can teach them that. I can't teach them. I can't force them to be empathetic listeners. I can't force them to want to live a life by design and have the same goals that I have and that sort of stuff. I'm just lucky in the sense that my guys see the value in that from early on in our working together. It probably has to do a lot with how I lead them, though.
Right.
And I think being the leader, doing that to people underneath you, helps bring in not in life, but just in a job, pecking order. It helps them feel like you're not some untouchable entity up here. You're human, just like they are.
Right. And one thing I'd say to that too, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but Laura, actually, just now when you kind of did the, kind of almost calling back what the person said to make sure you understand. when the understanding is there, it's a little flattering. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little flattering. It's like, wow, you were listening, you know? And then even when there's a little bit of frustration, because I've had the same frustration sitting up on the calls, being like, well, we say it this way. You don't have to say it that way, and it's never get frustrated, none of that. And so there's almost a whole nother piece to it when you see it come back and it's correct. And you don't see the same issue over and over and over. And it's like, I actually now I'm kind of curious to ask my team about it. But for me, it's a whole nother, it's an emotional deposit. I feel like to me as well, and I'm hoping it's that deposit to them also, because it, taking that extra bit of time that is being effective with your team as opposed to just being efficient, which no one really wants. Steve, anything else you'd add to that?
I mean, kind of piggyback on what both of y'all were talking about was like, this isn't earth-shattering stuff. This is stuff that we know, but it's like one of those things where, I don't know, you hear it in coaching, you hear it in whatever all the time, but like you start seeing it from different angles and it just hits different, and you just need that repeat thing.
Right.
I think for, to go to disc personality thing, like if you have a high D, like a Laura, who's a high driver. I don't know. Are you a high D, Laura? I'm gonna guess.
I'm a high D, high I. So I jump quick, make decisions hastily, and I drive hard.
Just run through the wall and we'll figure it out.
Have questions later.
But that's the thing. So for a high D, like for you, it's hard to stop and say, and because you think to yourself, damn it, I want it done this way. This is the way I want it done. And like my decisions, but we all have to learn that if we can get buy-in from people, if we can get people to say they get me and whatever, people will run through walls for you. If you, and for D's, it's a hard pill to swallow. But once you swallow it, you realize, holy crap, it's a big thing.
Yeah. To your point, Steve, my employees are both not high D's. High C's, high F's, and they are busy bees. They love to work. But because I stopped and listened to them, like I think a high D, I don't think we care who listens to us. We just talk and run you over, period. Like we don't give a shit. So there's that. But for those other profiles that do care, the buy-in, to your point, Steve, was amazing, right? The fact that I stop, I listen, I care, I give them feedback, and we're always on the same page. I don't come to them angry if, Gladys makes a mistake grammatically. We talk about it, we fix it, and we move on. And so there's never a fear. There's always a welcomed conversation and a buy-in, right? And I love that word. I think that's a great way to describe it, Steve. I think buy-in is perfect because to your point, David, we don't live in a society that listen. That 80-20 rule, I would say probably shrinks when you look at this. I would not say 20% of humans are effective listeners. I would say it's closer to 10%. So I think when somebody finds an effective listener, somebody who really listens to understand, I think we become remoras. And we're like those little sucker fish that just suck to the side of a shark.
Right.
We don't want to let go of those relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So autobiographical. I'm gonna screw it up. Autobiographical. Actually, autobiographical listening. He kind of talks about this one is essentially filtering what others say through your own paradigms, your own experiences, and so forth. I feel like, have you guys run into this, and do you guys find yourself guilty of this in cases, and how do you kind of address it as it happens?
Well, to me, it's just like we were talking about. I mean, it's like this needs to be front and center in our minds. Like especially for me, like if I'm making phone calls and somebody hasn't sold their house, it's an expired listing or withdrawn listing, they didn't sell their house. Of course, they didn't sell their house because they didn't hire me. That's why. And it's like, look, I understand you might think blank, blank, and blank, but like I sell houses and I've got the solution. So why don't I come over and let me show you what my solutions are? And, you know, I have to have a constant reminder of don't do that, because they'll say yes and they'll let you get the appointment, and then they'll cancel the appointment in 5 minutes just to get you off the phone. Whereas if we ask more questions, like, as we go, like, tell me more about blank, blank, blank. If we slow it down a little bit, like our fear is to slow it down, because if we don't slow it down, we lose the appointment. Number one. And number two, again, we're all kind of raging D's in real estate. And again, that's just like, we just run through the door and say, I'm here to sell your house. Let's go. That's why, that's how you lose people.
So I have found a lot of value in just shutting up, because people will talk through the silence. It's going to either be you or the other person you're having that conversation with. And if you're the one talking through the silence, a lot of times, one, you're repeating yourself because you're just talking to talk, right? Nobody likes that uncomfortable silence. And two, you're not necessarily hearing what they're saying, because again, you're just filling that void. So for me to not just interject in places that maybe my comment or statement is not warranted, I have actually started, well, like you'll see me and I'm counting to 3 in my head before I'll even say something. Because a lot of times, like, we always use the real estate reference because that's what we do for a living. But like, you'll be talking to a buyer and they'll say, great, I want a house that's new and it's been built, in the last 10 years. And then, the first thing we want to do is say, well, that doesn't exist in Alpharetta. We've been built, all these houses have been built since 1988. But they're going to go, well, I want new appliances, right? They're going to start filling in those gaps and those.
It happens every time.
That you're trying to fill in, but you don't really have the data or the platform to know what they're really saying. So for me to alleviate that from happening in those moments of communication. Okay, so what I hear you saying is we're looking for a house that's 10 years older or less. Can I educate you about the Alpharetta area and how our growth has happened? Would that be okay? Right? I'm not demanding I tell them. I'm asking if it's okay.
Right.
I'm very selective in how I have these conversations, because whenever things go south, you always want to be able to redirect them to the conversation that was in the northern direction before it started heading south. You'll pull them out of that hole very quickly. If you try to fill those holes where they're leaving the details out, you're going to fill them with the wrong information.
Yep.
Right. So satisfied needs do not motivate. That was something that was in the book. It's a quote from the book. I wish I had known that a long time ago, because I felt like when I first got into sales, to me, it was like, Steve, you talked about this. It's like, for me, it's like, close the deal, close the deal, close the deal, close the deal, close the deal. But then at that point, I was getting the mentality of, I'm not stopping to listen, because you may be satisfying a need that's not actually a need. You're never going to find it out unless, Lord, to your point, you shut up. So one last question I have here. So Laura, you kind of talked about the 80-20 rule. And, obviously 20% being kind of the side that doesn't empathically listen. What percentage of problems do you think are just poor communication?
99.
99.9.
I really do. I really do. I mean, I can look at my divorce. I can look at clients I fired. I can look at it. 100% goes back to poor communication. It goes back to not setting expectations, not having a clear vision, not having a clear picture of what that person that you're communicating is looking for or to obtain or whatever. So for me, 100% of negative conversations or bad situations truly are because somebody in that maybe both, more than likely both, or whoever's in it, are not actually listening.
Exactly.
I truly think all miscommunication, all negative things can be, I mean, not health things, whatever, but from a communication standpoint, I truly feel that it is 100% avoidable. I mean, you look at what he was saying about the court case, right? There was the companies that had kind of worked together. I don't remember what the full story was, but they were working together, and like the next day they were going to a full-blown court, and they were like, no, stop. They sat down, they had a conversation, and they walked away feeling great about one another. I mean, take divorces, for example. At some point you liked each other. You created humans together, therefore you were intimate. Right? That is not an act that two people who hate each other do often, okay?
Right. It's not an accident.
No, that's a right. And at some point, Rob, probably piss poor communication, the two of you have now separated and are not on the same page. And, you know, I look at people as a divorced person. Why did this couple get divorced and they like can live in the same neighborhood and like be best friends, and everybody wears I'm the stepmom and I'm the stepdad and I'm the mom, and you know, of Jordan McCluskey. And I'm like, I would like probably stab my ex-husband's wife's eyes out if she had a bonus mom t-shirt on in front of me, like legitimately. But I can tell you that all of that goes back to not feeling like I never wanted to come to a reasonable agreement because I never felt like Brian fully understood what hurt. So I went through the whole thing. Fuck you. I'll spend every penny of that 60 grand twice. And I did. Bought twice, right? Twice. And the second time it was sad because my children were involved. They weren't 2 and 8 months old. They were 14 and 16, or not, they're not that old. They were 14 and 12, I think is what they were. But at that point, the court says, hey, the kids, we're going to listen empathetically to the kids. And guess where my case landed? Not what I wanted or Brian wanted. I mean, it was what I wanted more so than him, but not because it's what I wanted. It's because the courts listened to the children.
Right.
You know, they were like, screw both of you adults. What do the kids want? Because at this point, that's who matters.
Right.
You know?
So, I mean, so to your credit, the poor or the better communication doesn't necessarily erase the problems. I mean, the problems are there, but it makes for more harmony. It makes for easier. I mean, I tell this to sellers or buyers all the time, is like, this may be your time to sell. I'm not pushing people out there to sell if it's not time to sell. Like, you will sell your house one day.
Right.
You will. One way or the other. Either you or somebody after you is going to sell your house.
Right.
And I just want to be there to help out and be there to help out along the way however I can. You know, so, I mean, there's no script that's going to get you the deal like 100% of the time, or a script that's going to get you away from the problem, you know, but it creates the harmony and all that stuff. So.
Right. Right. When closing, for to seek first to understand, then to be understood. So that brings me to the end of the chapter. Is there anything that you guys wanted to kind of talk about in the last 3-4 minutes?
No, I think this was a great conversation. I mean,
he did talk about the differences in body language, sound, and words, right?
Right.
That was this chapter, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
So because I think it's 55% is body language, 38% is tone, 7% is words.
Right.
So that's like classic, not just sales, but talking to your kids or whatever. We say it to the kids all the time. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Like, you know, there's take out the trash, or there's take out the trash. You know what I mean? So from a sales perspective or from a real estate perspective, that's why we always say get to the house.
Right.
Get in the house. Somebody on the phone can lie to you, can whatever, but if you're face to face with them, you can read their body language, they can read your body language. All of a sudden you're having better communications. It's the same thing, with your kids, you know, we have to check ourselves when we're talking to our kids and like, all right, we have to.
Well, it's very easy to dictate when you're raising your kids.
Yes.
And like when you're talking about body language, right? If somebody's talking to you and they're going, yeah, I hear ya. Yeah, I hear ya. Or they're going, okay, great. I hear you. I get it. Right? That eye contact, that leaning in, that mimicking what they're doing, right? When we go on listing appointments, what's the first thing we're taught? Ask for a glass of water and mimic what the seller's doing. The seller's leaning in, so are you.
Right.
The seller's sitting back, so are you. If the seller yawns, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. So do you.
Me too. Yeah.
Right? Because your body language mimicking what they're doing is affirmation to their brain that you're listening and you're taking in everything because you're copying what they're doing and you're hanging on every word, right? So I think that body language, and that's a great, kind of final thought, Steve, to bring up is
absolutely
super important. When I'm talking to my kids, even if I'm like ready to rip their head off and put it on my shelf as a trophy, I'm still trying to, not look at them like I've got double horns and a dagger coming out, because they're going to clam up. They're not going to tell me what I need to hear.
Let's
hope body language.
David, let's hope that our heads don't end up as trophies.
I'm thinking about this.
That's our second trophy to have to call, man. Dang.
Oh man.
Too funny. All right, before we get cut off, so next week we are on habit 7, sharpen the saw, principles of balance, self-renewal. I think that's going to conclude our book. So are we good? I'm sorry, we're 6 and 7, right? Synergize principles of creative cooperation and sharpen the saw. We decided to try to do both of those this week. Is that still the plan?
That's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then Steve, your book's next. So if you'll just email us all that so we can get set up for that, and you'll lead that conversation. Are you good with that?
That's fine. What book are we doing? Have we talked about it?
You picked it.
Never split the difference, right?
Are we doing it?
Whatever book you put, yes.
Never split the difference.
It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you guys next week for chapter 6 and 7 discussion, and then never split the difference the following week.
All right, let's make it happen.